Hey, so today I'd like to talk about drum heads. Not tuning drums, because there are plenty of videos on that, some of which are really good, but just drum heads themselves, the different features and things you should be aware of when selecting drum heads and putting them on your drums. So the first thing I have here is a drum head. This is a Remo Weather King Emperor Batter. It's 2-ply. It's just going to serve as a good example. So basically, there are different features you can look for when you're getting a drum head. The underlying theme is that the more features you have, the more things you add to a drum head, the duller the sound is going to be. The fewer features, or the more things you subtract from a drum head, the brighter the sound is going to be. So this being a 2-ply head is going to be a little bit duller sounding than a single-ply head. If I had a ring around it, a dot in the center, some kind of internal dampening foam, a coating on it, those would all bring the sound down from its brightest, most ringy open possibility. If you want that more dampened sound, go for the head with the dots and the stripes and the coatings. If you want a more bright open sound, that stuff looks great, but it's not really going to help you out. It's just going to take away. The one thing that doesn't take away is holes. I've seen snare drum heads with holes around the outside. I've seen bass drum heads with holes cut in them, obviously. And those things will actually almost dry out and brighten up your sound even more. But then again, that's taking something away from the head. So the less head you have there, the more bright and open it's going to be. So basically, as far as tuning, I'm not going to show you how to do it, but I'm just going to explain that drum heads are extremely durable mylar material. The only way really to break one is to have it be out of tune. I mean, barring using a knife or something, if you just use a drum head, it'll be extremely difficult for you to break a drum head that's in tune. However, if it's out of tune, if one side's tighter than the other, or if you have one lug that's really loose and the rest are great, then all that force you're putting in the drum is going to go to that weakness. And that's where a tear or a dent is going to develop. So if you see a lot of dents or you're breaking heads, you know that your drums just aren't in tune and you need to go back, even those back out. Okay, drum heads are the primary way to change the sound of your drums. A lot of people, they'll get confused when they hear drums on an album and when they hear drums live and they don't sound the same. They want to try to make the live drums sound like their favorite album. The problem with that is that the album's been compressed, it's been EQ'd, there's been delay and reverb and what have you, chorus put on there. People go nuts. Drum heads in real life, in the live setup, don't have any of that, and you're not going to achieve that, and that's okay, because live drums don't need to sound like album drums, they need to sound like drums. So the more features you try to put on a drum head to get that EQ'd compressed album sound, and the more tape and foam and gel that you stick on the heads, all you're doing is like dampening down and making your sound less high quality. So then when you mic it up at a live venue, or you're playing with a 10-piece orchestra, whatever it is, then it's harder for you to cut through and you're not giving the best live sound that you could. And this is kind of a growing problem among people, that they just don't understand that drums sound bright and ringy live, and then on the album you can dampen them down to that compressed 70s rock sound. But that's not the way they start, and that's not the way they should start, in my opinion. The one thing that I'll say as an exception to this is, I have an example here. If you have a persistent ring in your drum that just won't go away, no matter how you tune it, the one thing you can do is you can use physics and harmonics to your favor. So drum heads, just like guitar strings, have different harmonics when you vibrate them, and they go in rings from the inside out. And so if you just isolate the harmonic that you think is causing that obnoxious ring, you can put a tiny piece of tape, this is like a 2-inch piece of tape here, on that one offending ring, dampen it out, but leave the rest of the drum intact. So I'm not just throwing a studio ring on here. I'm not just taping a bunch of napkins or foam to the outside of it, duct tape, whatever. Just taking a tiny piece and canceling out that one harmonic frequency, and then the rest of the drum is still open, very light sounding. And that's a good thing because you want to cut through and you want to be heard. Most studio drummers, honestly, will play with single ply clear heads to get the most open tone, and they'll let the engineer go nuts with whatever it is they want to sound like in the final mix. And so if you just go with that same interpretation, get whatever head you want, but allow it to do its job and get a nice open sounding drum, then you can always process it later. So good luck, and I hope that your drums sound good or better after you hear this.